Hi everyone, it's Lou Collins and I'm here with a Chameleon Color Tones project for you. So I'm going to be using the Color Tones pens. I'm also going to be using the Color Tops as well and doing lots of different blending techniques. Now I do lots of lettering and today I've got a sketch here of a piece of lettering that I've done already. I've got it all sketched out and we're all going to colour it in. I'm going to use lots of techniques and hopefully you'll learn something from this. So what I'll do is first of all start with this main word through the middle, that's happiness. You may be able to just about see it. Now what I absolutely love about the Chameleon pens is for my brush lettering and for any of my calligraphy and different type of lettering, I've got the two different nibs to choose from in every colour ink. It also makes the blending really simple, because if I want to use this colour but with a hint of yellow in just the top of the letter or running through the middle, I can then use my Colour Tops to do some blending. Now one of the nibs on these pens is a brush nib, which is absolutely perfect of course for brush lettering. If I want to do some finer detail, or if I want to fill in any errors I've made or any areas where I've missed, I can then use the bullet nib as well. And I'm sure that this is then the exact same colour and shade as I used each time. So I'm going to take throughout this word happiness the lighter shade of each one for my letter. So for the H I'm going to be doing the red coral here, and I'm going to go over the whole word first, or the whole letter sorry, with my brush nib, and then I'm going to fill in with some shading afterwards. So I'm pressing down and you can see with this I do get the nice wide strokes that I want for my brush lettering, but then when I do want them I can also get the thinner lines too using just the tip of that nib there. So I've got my H, and what I'm now going to do is just bring in the cinnamon. So this is the Colour Top here, and it's a slightly darker shade than the red coral. So if I then take from either the brush nib there that will fit in the Colour Top, or from the bullet nib, which I'm going to use, I'm going to just take the lids off each and place the two together like so. That clicks in place so I know that they are touching, and that's about 3, 4, 5 seconds maybe. Now if you're not sure on how long to put or fuse the two colours together, maybe time it first time and just use a piece of scrap paper, which I've got to my side here if I need it, to see how long you need. Now I'm going to go to the base of each of my letters here, and I'm going to colour in from the base. I'm just going to turn this upside down, and I'm going to colour this darker red in where I've just gone, and I'm going to keep going until I'm happy that that has gone all the way back to the original colour. Now as I'm going, I'm doing a few strokes side to side, and then I'm just neatening up the edges as well. Neaten up the edges as you go, because of course if you go back and neaten up the edges afterwards, you could end up with a slightly different colour shade to the edges of your letters. I will be doing a shading technique, a shadowing technique as well, so these will be less obvious anyway. So I'm starting to come back to the original red coral that we started with, and hopefully by the time I get to the crossbar here I will be back almost to the original colour. So I'm just doing little strokes. If you only wanted this lower portion to be the darker red, you could absolutely only fuse that for maybe a few seconds. Now I'm pretty much back to the original colour here. So you can see now if I was to do my edges, that's a slightly different shade. That's why we do it as we go along. And I'm going to do exactly the same again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 should be enough, and then do the same again. Now for my letters throughout this happiness word, because this is going to be the main word for the whole piece, the piece that stands out, of course, the word happiness, I'm going to be using rainbow colours. If you want to throughout this, you can actually blend your colours into each other as well, rather than using one different colour for each letter. It's entirely up to you, and of course the Colour Tops make this really easy to do. See, I've reached my crossbar there. I've still got a tiny amount of colour left in the nib from the cinnamon. Just keep working up. That's almost blended out now, so little strokes up there. Just neaten up this edge before all the colour goes. There we go. Now put the lids and including the caps back on the colour tops as well, so that nothing dries out. Now what I love about these is that the colour's not bleeding. This is on a super smooth cardstock there. You can see we've got our colour blend, and when we've done the whole word we can neaten that up with some shadows as well. It will look fabulous. But we're not getting any bleeding from the ink because it dries ever so quickly and it's so neat. So I'm going to work through here, through some colours. So I've got a red. I'm going to go through the colours of the rainbow. So the red, orange, yellow, and so on and so forth. So I'll speed this through, but you can see what I'm doing, exactly the same technique as I've just done for the H there. Now I've just stopped here because I wanted to show you what I can do when two colours join like this and you want them to blend slightly more. So I used here the yellow, so this is Summer Sun here for the main part of my P. You can see those pencil lines underneath, but those will all be erased afterwards. The ink kind of sinks into the paper, whereas the pencils sit on top, so very easy to erase. Now I know that I used Seville Orange and Tangerine to do my A. I also brought in a tiny little bit of hot cocoa as well, just to darken the bottom, but I think certainly Seville Orange and Tangerine would be this little flick here that's leading into that P. So what I'm going to do is bring in my Seville Orange here, my colour top, and I'm going to put just a tiny bit onto the bullet nib of my Summer Sun there, so I can just blend this in slightly. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, and just see how we can blend this in. So like so, just bringing that into the edge of the P. Now what I'm going to do is take this over onto my scrap of paper and just take a little bit of colour off, just to ease that out a bit quicker. There we go. And we're almost then back, and go into that flick there as well. We're almost back into our yellow, and that's really blended along very nicely with everything else. So there it looks almost like watercolour. It's just blended beautifully from one colour into another. And now I'll continue with the rest of the colours. So now I've finished colour blending throughout the entire word, and you can see how it does look as if everything is a nice wet ink and it's all just blended together beautifully. Now, to finish off any edges that I'm not entirely happy with, where I've been blending and maybe gone over the edge, I'm going to use a shadow technique, and my favourite colour to do this with is the neutral grey 4. Okay, this is quite a pale grey, but it's absolutely perfect for adding a drop shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush tip, and I'm going to come to the right and the base of each of these letters individually, concentrating on the thicker lines rather than those thin lines, because these are the ones that would give the heavier drop shadow. So I'm going to go right up against each of the letters and run just along the edge there, all the way down to that crossbar, and then I'm going to pick that up again after the crossbar and continue down to the bottom of the letter and swing that just underneath as well. So you can see how that really lifts that letter up. I'm going to do exactly the same here again with this side of the 8, just stopping at the crossbar and then coming right up to the top. And then I'll continue through all the letters, just concentrating on where those wider parts of the letters are, those thicker strokes, rather than anything that is thinner. And this will give us a lovely drop shadow and really make everything stand out. So now I want to do some blending along this banner. I've just gone over it with the baby blue, which is extremely pale, so you can just about see a little bit of colour there. And I want to blend a bit of colour into the two edges there, just to make it look as if it's slightly curved. I will be adding a drop shadow to that as well, and again I'll be going back to my neutral grey number 4 to do that in a moment, the same as we did on this happiness word. But I want to show you how I just very subtly add a little bit of colour. So I've taken a sky blue, which again is quite a pale blue. I'm just going to touch that on there for a second or two and just go down there. Now you can of course trial and error this if you need to on a piece of scrap paper, but I would say 1 second, 2 seconds is more than enough. And then I'm just in tiny little circles, I'm going to blend this out from the very edge of the banner and then into the middle, so it really is just touching the very ends. You can see how that's just added a little bit of shadow to the corners there. I'll do exactly the same 1, 2 on this end. So one long line along there and then tiny little circles until I'm happy that that has blended itself out. There we go, no more colour there. And as I said, when you're laying one colour on top of another that's the same colour, you're not going to get a darker shade. So where this is a bit damp here, that will lighten up to be exactly the same as the original baby blue colour. Now I'm going to do the same here at the corners, a little bit, so just a second longer there. So where the banner is here, I'm going to do exactly the same and do those tiny little circles outwards, so that's just adding a bit of a shadow to it. And the tails can be the pale colour. You can see how that's really bringing that to life. And then the same on this corner as well. So making sure that that corner is nice and dark. And then bringing that colour out again, and that really does make it look quite 3D. Now I probably didn't do that quite enough, so another second on there just to bring this colour out a little bit further. But you can of course do that, you can go over if you need to. If you need to extend the colour a little bit further, just refuse your pens again for a few seconds and continue. So now we've got that lovely drop shadow. For the underneath of the banner, where it's folded over, it's going to be quite dark, so I'm going to take that sky blue and take the whole pen, use the bullet nib and just colour that in the darker shade, because that really would be quite shaded under there. And if you want to go in with an even darker colour, maybe add in a grey, you can do that too, to really make it look quite deep and shadowed. There we go, so I'm going to go over that with my black pen for the text and my grey pen for the shadow in the same way as I did on those letters. Now for my word pens at the bottom, I want to make this quite dark, quite bold. It's one of the main colours again, like the happiness. But I also want to have a hint of colour in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my vermilion colour here, the red, and I'm going to colour the entire word in, or the entire letter in the red first of all. So I'm going to use the brush pen the same way as I did with the happiness word. So I'm just going to go over it first of all in this colour, and then I'm going to do some blending with it. So pressing down to get my thick stroke there, and then lifting up with this brush nib to be able to get my thin strokes. Really handy. So there's my P. Now what I'm going to do is take my bullet nib, and I'm actually going to make this so bold by using my black there of my colour tops. So this is really going to make this pop by making it quite dark. I want the effect of an ink, so with the black that will achieve that. So I'm going to try 5 seconds, 4, 5, and see how long that black lasts. So if I start here on the bottom, see that really is quite dark. Again, just do the edges for a few millimetres, then colour in, and then again do the edges a few millimetres. colour in again. I only really want the very middle section of each of these letters to have any colour. So soon, hopefully I'll start to blend out. There you go, it's starting to ease up there. Just keeping those edges nice and sharp. Again, we will do a shadow technique on these, so don't worry if you go over very slightly. We can see that red line there, we can just neaten that up at the end. So now I'm really starting to come out of the black into the red, the centre. Now this is a bit trickier because you need to keep 3 areas all a similar shade as we work up, so I'm doing just a tiny little bit of each one at a time. There we go, to make sure they all blend up in a similar way. I think we're almost back at the red there, the original colour. There we go. I think that's about right. And just do a line down here just in case it's slightly darker, but I think it's about the same. So now what I want to do is do exactly the same, but coming down from the top. So I'll do that in a moment. While I'm here, I'm just going to neaten up the base of that P using my detail pen. I'm going to use the wider nib, that's the 0.6mm, and just come down this edge where I went slightly over, and just neaten that up a bit now before I go away and forget about it. There we go. So I always keep this to hand. Then I'm going to do this again. I'm probably going to do it 4 seconds maybe. So 1, 2, 3, 4 for the top, and see how we go with that. Again, we've got 2 sections to work on, so it may be that you want to work down to where the top of this is, and then from here, and don't forget there's no hurry, so the ink isn't going anywhere, it will sit there until you're ready. So take your time with the blending, and if you need to move between the 2 or 3 or in this case now 4 sections gradually, you've got the time to do that. There we go, we're almost back now to the original colour. I think we are at the original colour now. We'll just go down over everything just in case there's a little bit of the darkness still there. There we go. So that's going to be nice and dark, but just with a flash of colour running through the middle. Now I'm going to continue and do the other 4 characters, so the E, N, S and the exclamation mark, and I'll whiz through those so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now I've decided that looking at this, I've still got my green leaves to do. I want to make it pop a little bit more, so I'm going to add some more black in there. That's going to be with the detail pen. I'm going to go along the lines where the shadows are, but with the fine black as well on my word here and here. And then I think the orange drop shadow here I'm going to make black too. That will really make that pop. When I've finished that, I'll make a decision as to whether I do an outline on the banners or not. So lastly, to finish this project off, I'm going to do some leaves just to add some detail around the edge there, make it flow a little bit better as well. I'm going to be bringing that green from the centre onto the outside to make everything fit together. So I'm going to pick again, it's this colour, which is the green apple. That's what I've used in the centre of the P here. I'm going to be using that for the base of the leaves. And then I'm going to be using grass green to fuse the colours together and make a darker shade towards the stem of each of the leaves, and then it will lighten as it goes outwards. So I'll do one here for you and then I'll speed through the others so you can see what I'm doing. So if I start, I have to turn this around. If I start this in this corner, so this is my leaf here. So I'm going to colour in the very base, so it's a very solid colour all the way through. There's a stem with, on this one, 3 leaves. There we go. I've used a bullet nib because it's smaller, so I've got a little bit more detail there. What I'm going to do next is use the colour top, and again this is the grass green. So apple and grass, it's all very relevant to the leaves. Just blending that for 2 to 3 seconds. Then I'm going to go in onto the leaf at the very base there where the stem joins and just colour the very tips. And I'm going to do little circles all the way round until that colour gradually fades out towards the tip. I think I've probably fused that for a little bit too long, so I'm just going to colour some of that away onto my scrap piece of paper and then continue. So next time I will fuse this maybe for, we'll try 1 to 2 seconds instead. 1, 2, and then see how that works this time. If you find you get a really lovely colour blend at some point, make sure you make a note of the fuse times and which colours you've used so you can easily go back to it again. And don't forget they will fuse much better, of course, if you've got your colour top at the top and your pen underneath, so that the gravity pulls that ink down there. Doesn't matter if with these leaves some of them are darker than others, some may the colour may come through really quickly, some may be really quite dark all the way through. It doesn't matter, of course, in nature leaves would all be different colours anyway. There we go. So just pop that to the side for a second. I'm then going to take the grass green here, the pen, use the bullet nib and just do the stems in this colour as well. Like so. And then I think I'm going to add a little bit of detail to these too with just the 0.4mm. I'm just going to do an outline. Very rough. I'm not going to be completing all the lines. I'm not worrying about how neat it is. Just ties it in with the black outline that we've got on everything else within the piece around all the letters. There we go. So the leaves like that, I'm going to continue. I've got another larger one here, and then I've got 2 at the bottom as well. So I'll just whiz through those. So I've finished my leaves, I've gone round all of them there, I've got them sort of almost in all 4 corners to bring everything together. You may have noticed I actually went over the yellow and the by there, wasn't happy with that, with the black, looked a bit bumblebee-esque, so I went over with the turquoise. It's given it a nice sort of green shade now. The last thing I want to do to really make a few of these words pop is bring in my Chameleon pencils. I'm going to be using the white. This is just to add some highlights to some of the words. Now these are a very, very soft lead, really vibrant colour, so I know that that white will be showing up as highlights on my colours. So I'm just going to go in with it on some of the larger parts of the darker areas. If I just show you there on the black, you can see how that really shows a wonderful highlight there. I'm just keeping to the top left. I'm imagining the light's coming from here, so it's just bouncing off some of these letters. Obviously the yellow is not such a dark colour, so it's not as easy to see on there. And this is a bit make it up as you go along. There's not too many rules as long as you're sticking to the same sort of area on most of the letters. It's really going to look brilliant on some of these black areas here. So on the end there, you can make some of the light elements longer, some shorter, some little dots if you want. You see there, that's just added a few little highlights. So there's a finished piece. Now you just need to frame it, pop it on the wall, give it to someone, maybe mount it and put it on the front of a card. It's going to look absolutely fabulous, whatever you do with it.